Sometimes scientists find truly unusual archaeological finds, who simply cannot find explanations. Countless films and documentary paintings are shot about ancient Rome. We are impressed with these enormous dimensions of the empire. But what do we know about it at all? About her real story? Did it really exist, and if so, when? Let's figure it out. The official date of the birth of Rome is 753 BC. But it is assumed that the city appeared much earlier. Over its long history, the Eternal City has repeatedly changed its appearance, and many ancient structures still keep the memory of the former greatness of the Roman Empire. But is it really so? Or are it just ruins? Today, we will consider the history of the most famous empire, Roman. Almost everyone knows about it, because how many films and legends have been written. Today, we will see inconsistencies with real history. Consider the old monuments, ancient works, but in the end, the most interesting thing is to take a look at cards where the Roman Empire is simply not depicted, although it should have been prosperous according to the modern history. In the age of informatization, you can easily find the answer even to the most difficult question. However, it would be a deep delusion to believe that modern science knows everything about the ancient world, in particular about the Roman Empire. All that we know today about ancient Rome came to us thanks to the works of Titus Livia. I think about the merits of the ancient historian too many, but what do we know about his personality? But in principle, there are not so many. It is known that he was born in the field of Venice and then ended up in Rome. He had at least 2 children, and there are still insignificant facts about his life, but they do not reveal the secrets of the personality of the famous historian, without the study of the works of which it is impossible to form a full-fledged idea of the history of the ancient world. Livy wrote a 142-volume essay covering as many as 7 centuries. But to surprise, the only books that have been completely preserved to this day are only his first 10 volumes, where other collections of essays have disappeared is still unknown. Perhaps having collected all the books together, like a puzzle, we would be able to see the actual picture of ancient Rome, but we have what we have. Old sources are randomly burned, and immediately new originals are created before our eyes. Perhaps I will surprise someone, but surprisingly, there is not a single genuine document confirming the existence of the Roman Empire. Of course, there are some evidence, but they are not older than the 15th century AD, and many historians, for some reason, is quite satisfied. Almost everything that we know today about the past of our civilization is based on sources from ancient Greece and Rome. However, few people know that most of these materials can simply be fake. Why so? Only copies printed in the Middle Ages, Fafiniu Sixtesin Vivo, reached us, and supposedly diligently removed from the originals. But what happened to the originals? For the most part, they were simply destroyed, but their copies were carefully preserved for descendants. A sane person immediately arises the question, why were the originals of ancient documents destroyed, mainly like heretical texts, and their exact copies are carefully preserved and replicated for study and use? The answer suggests itself. Copies were no longer dangerous to those who carefully destroyed the originals of ancient texts, and so that we still learn if at least some of these books have been preserved, it's scary to even imagine. We all know the magnificent Roman architecture, Colosseum, Capitol, Pantheon. All this is, of course, wonderful, but here the complete absence of ancient inscriptions with dates is blocked. On the walls of numerous cathedrals, palaces, churches, only signs with dates in the chronological system adopted today are hanging. You are informed that this cathedral is 500 years old, but the plate is nailed only in the 19th or in the 20th century. No old dates. And who built it and how? How? The structures of such a complex, mathematically accurate architecture were built by slaves and soldiers of the Roman legions. After all, we are being repeated all the time that wild barbarians captured by civilized Romans built these amazing masterpieces of architecture, which current builders are unlikely to repeat. And in addition, ancient Roman buildings amaze with their size. The already mentioned Colosseum, Pantheon, St. Peter's Cathedral, triumphal arches differ simply in huge sizes. For example, the Roman Pantheon, one of the most mysterious buildings in the world. In history, he is at least 2,000 years old, but what is interesting, over all these years, he was not repaired. At the same time, from an engineering point of view, Pantheon is an absolute masterpiece. A huge, strongest design, built with incomprehensible clarity and detail and the use of mysterious eternal materials. Modern historical myths say that Rome was founded by Gemini, Romul, and Rem, whom in infancy saved from faithful death and fed the Capitolic wolf, which is now one of the fundamental symbols of the Roman Empire. It is logical to assume that this statue was made in those distant times, since already for other post-Roman cultures it would not have such a great importance as for the founder of the city itself. But to surprise, this is not so. The statue of the capital wolf, who is now in Rome, was placed there by order, attention, of the Pope in 1473. It is amazing, as we see, the statue unexpectedly pops up only in the Middle Ages, and even by personal order of the Vatican. A group of researchers from the university, led by the professor, confirmed the hypothesis of the restorer Anna Maria Caruba, which was released in 2006, that the capital wolf, the symbol of Rome, was created in the 14th–15th century AD and not in the 5th century BC, as was still believed. And the symbol of the founding of Rome, the bronze statue of the she-wolf with 2 human babies, turned out to be about 1,700 years younger than the sacred city, and scientists have long established that the bronze figures of the boys were added only in the Renaissance. Nevertheless, before the restoration of 1997, no one had serious doubts about the authenticity of the wolf itself. So far, one of the restorers has not noticed that the she-wolf is a monolithic casting, that is, it was executed in a technique that has become available only later, in the Middle Ages. While in ancient times, complex bronze statues were first cast in separate parts and only then soldered together. Now, think about why it was necessary to fake the statue of the she-wolf and to date it in later centuries. But this is not the only find in the so-called ancient Rome. The column of Trajana, carved directly from marble and is seen with magnificent carvings. Look at the Sassum. The column of Trajan rises above Rome 38 meters. Ask what is wrong with her. Strange, but there is not a single inscription on the column itself. Not a single name or a single name is mentioned. The only inscription is only on the basement. By the way, it is curious to compare the state of the base in the 19th century with its appearance in the Yibsi century. It can be seen that in the 20th century, the base was noticeably restored. The fact that there are no inscriptions on the column itself, it already creates a number of some questions. Apparently, the bas-reliefs of the column of Trajan really followed some kind of old tradition. This is indicated by the following vivid fact. On many shields of the ancient Roman warriors, the Ottoman Ataman crescents, stars, and Christian crosses are visible. Well, later, as it turned out, the Trojan column was erected not earlier, but even later than the second half of the 13th century. Crusades. This is what is in reality depicted by the masters of the structure, and here is what one of the researchers writes. As you can see, bas-reliefs are perfectly preserved. The hand of time, corrosion has not touched them. This speaks of one single, a column of a maximum of 500 years, really about 300. I myself saw the stones of palaces that are 500 years old. Corrosion was very noticeable, and it was granite. For such a long period of time, bas-reliefs should have turned into a shapeless mass. And the column itself is made of Kara marble. It is from Karsk marble that the majority of structures and sculptures were created in the 17th to 18th centuries, and not only in Italy, but also in many parts of Europe.